So in my previous comment, I was making a point about the fact that Paul is not a dualist and that he uses the body in positive ways. And in the second comment, I want to talk about the way in which Paul uses the word body, soma, as a metaphor. And my jumping off point here will be a passage in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, but it will have important implications for the way in which we read Colossians and Ephesians, the two Deuteropauline letters for today. In 1 Corinthians 12, Paul is talking about gifts of the Spirit. And we know from our reading of 1 Corinthians that the Corinthian community particularly valued speaking in tongues. They saw that ecstatic language, that out-of-the-body language, as a sign that they already participated in the resurrection. It fed into their dualistic view of the world, that the spiritual was better, that the body was inferior, and that somehow this experience of speaking in tongues was an out-of-the-body experience, a resurrected experience, and they prized it above anything else. And so Paul then in chapters 12, 13, and 14 of 1 Corinthians has to speak about the nature of spiritual gifts. And in doing so, his major theme is to underline the interdependence of the members of the Corinthian community on one another, on the varieties of spiritual gifts, and upon the way in which those various spiritual gifts work together to build up the Christian community, which he calls the body of Christ. So listen to what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 12, not only about spiritual gifts, but also about the body and the way in which he uses the body as an extended metaphor. Here's what he says. There are varieties of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are varieties of service, but the same Lord. And there are varieties of activities, but it is the same God who activates all of them in every one. So he wants to say that there's one Spirit, there is one Lord, there is one God. To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. To one is given through the Spirit the utterance of wisdom, and to another the utterance of knowledge according to the same Spirit, or the one Spirit. To another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healing by the one Spirit, to another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another discernment of spirits, to another various kinds of tongues, to another the interpretation of tongues. Notice also how Paul puts tongues at the very end, not at the top of the list, as the Corinthians would have been wont to do. All of these are activated by one and the same Spirit, who allots each to each one individually, just as the Spirit chooses. So there are lots of gifts, varieties of gifts. Not everyone receives all the gifts, but rather each person receives a gift, and those gifts work together. They're mutually interdependent, mutually beneficial. All of them build up the Christian community and aid the common good. And now here then, Paul will evoke the metaphor of the body to describe the church that has been gifted by these various manifestations of the Spirit. Here's verse 12. For just as the body is one, but has many members, all of the members of the body, though many, are one body, and so it is with Christ. For in the one Spirit we were all baptized into the one body, Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, and we were all made to drink in the one Spirit. And here he then extends the metaphor further. The body does not consist of one member, but of many. If the foot were to say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I am not an eye, I don't belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? And if the whole body were hearing, where would the sense of smell be? But as it is, God has arranged the members of the body, each one of them as God chose. If all were a single member, where would the whole body be? The eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. On the contrary, the members of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable, and those members of the bodies that we think less honorable we clothe with great honor, and our less respectable members are treated with greater respect, whereas our more respectable members don't need this. But God has so arranged the body, giving greater honor to the inferior members, that there may be no dissension within the body, but that the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together with it. If one member is honored, all rejoice together with it. And then he extends the metaphor even further to reach his point. All of you are the body, one body of Christ, and individually members of it. God has appointed in the church apostles, prophets, teachers, people with deeds of power, with gifts of healing, forms of assistance, forms of leadership, various kinds of tongues. Are all apostles? Are all prophets? Are all teachers? Do all work miracles? Do all possess gifts of healing? Do all speak with tongues? Do all interpret? No. The way in which Paul frames the question in Greek implies the answer no. All are necessary. All are members or parts of the body working together. They're mutually interdependent. They are mutually dependent upon one another for the common good of the body and the full manifestation of the various gifts of the Spirit for the benefit of the one body that is the Christian community and the church. When you turn to the Deutero-Pauline letters, one of the differences we note there is that the metaphor of the body is used differently. It is not used as an organic metaphor of mutual dependence or interdependence, but rather the metaphor in Colossians and Ephesians in particular is used in a hierarchical fashion. Christ is the head of the body. In Paul's undisputed letter, he never says that about Christ. He never says that Christ is the head of the body. He's always using that body metaphor to talk about an organic unity and mutual dependence. But in Colossians and Ephesians, the metaphor shifts to one of hierarchy. And it's similar to how the metaphor is used in Greco-Roman philosophical and political literature to talk about the state, and to talk about the state that is a body that is arranged hierarchically and that has a head, the king or the emperor. And so when we turn to the pages of Colossians and Ephesians, we see that the body metaphor is used hierarchically, with Christ as the head, and the Christian community then is arranged hierarchically as well. And the family is the locus of that hierarchical arrangement, where the husband, the father, the male is the head, followed by the wife, the female, the mother, as underneath the pater familias, followed by children, followed by slaves. And so in the Deutero-Pauline letters, there is this hierarchical arrangement of the body, this orderly arrangement of the body that reflects a respectable unit within the Greco-Roman society, an image of stability, not a mutual interdependence whereby the varieties of spiritual gifts are manifested, but rather a respectable, ordered, hierarchical unit that takes its place within society. I hope you'll pay attention to that as you read Colossians and Ephesians and see how the metaphor is used in a rather different way.